Hi, this is Professor Marsh, and this is just another short note on amending tax returns, which is topic 34, I believe, in the IRS's numbering schedule for the VITA volunteer program. And what I'd like to do is just to go briefly through the rules for amending a return. I'm going to start with there's not a lesson plan for this in the current materials that I'm aware of, but there is a set of PowerPoint slides for amended and prior year returns. And if you'll go ahead and take a look at that, what they'll show you is the information on the first page of the PowerPoint presentation, information that goes on Form 1040X, and that is the amended U.S. individual income tax return. And that can be filed at any time within either 3 years after the original return's due date. And in the case of filing a claim for refund on Form 1040X, that can be filed at any time within 3 years of the original return's due date, or within 2 years after the tax was actually paid, whichever is later. So that's those are the statute of limitations rules for both amended returns generally, and then also for refunds. On the second page of the PowerPoint presentation, they direct you to look at all the additional resources listed in the L&L-T references tab. That's the link and learn references that you'll find on at VITA TCE Central, and review all the tips and cautions in the lesson. The due date is certainly one of the most important, and to look at all the examples and the sample interviews, and then reviewing the answer. So you can click when you go to your skills workout, which is still at VITA TCE, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You can definitely check your answers. So the objectives of this lesson is to help you as tax preparers understand how to identify when it's appropriate to prepare an amended return, Form 1040X, the time limits, which we've talked about, how to assemble and submit the Form 1040X, provide guidance when preparing prior year's returns, and identify when it's appropriate. So sometimes you don't have a amended return for a prior year because the taxpayer hasn't filed the return for the prior year, and so this tells you when it's appropriate to file the late prior year return. So first topic, third slide, when it's available, when to amend a return. The form is the Form 1040X, as I mentioned, pictured on page 1 of the slide presentation. The time limit is generally 3 years from the original due date, although the refunds and balances due, sometimes the taxpayer has made a mistake, and so they want to report an omitted deduction or perhaps correct overstated income in order to generate a refund. Sometimes there'll be a balance due because the taxpayer has forgotten to include income or perhaps made a mistake in reporting deductions. What are those common mistakes? Well, perhaps a deduction for an expense that's taken, it was paid maybe in 2023, but the taxpayer reported it in 2022. So reporting an expense in the wrong year is a pretty common mistake, or forgetting or omitting an unusual item of income. Examples of that might be distributions from retirement accounts for a taxpayer who's going through a hardship and doesn't or no longer qualifies for hardship exceptions to the reporting of that income, can no longer treat it as a loan or something that it can repay. Definitions are always available in the glossary, and then also be aware of injured spouse relief. That's another important topic that's discussed in these materials. When to amend a return, you can see all of those discussed on slide number 6. I think I've discussed most of them. Using the wrong filing status. Sometimes taxpayers use the wrong filing status. So in most cases you can correct that. Sometimes you can't, but often you can. Also, just to note that if there's a math error on the return, well, first of all, there shouldn't be a math error on the return if we prepared it, because the TaxSlayer software shouldn't make math errors. In fact, don't know of any math errors it's ever made, and the IRS's computer typically doesn't make any math errors either. So those are typically corrected at the service center, and then the taxpayer receives a notice of a math error, such as one that might be made on a paper return where the calculations were done manually. Okay, so if you're going to claim injured spouse treatment, an injured spouse on a joint return isn't obligated to pay for past due amounts owed by their spouse, such as child support, education loans, prior year's taxes. There's a form, Form 8379, which can be filed by itself if it wasn't filed with the original return, or you can file it with the 1040X to claim an additional refund not associated with the original injured spouse's claim, or to offset against having the injured spouse's overpayment applied to offset the spouse. Then Form 1040X, you can see that there are 3 columns on the return, and the columns obviously go vertically, and then on the horizontal axis, you first report the original amount, then you report the change, and then you report the correct amount. And you do that in columns A, B, and C, respectively. So you just spread it across, show the difference, whether it's an increase or a decrease. Increase is a positive number, decrease is in brackets, it's a negative number, and then the correct amount. And you can see how that works on slide number 8. Now, on slide number 9, there's a discussion of exemptions and dependents. You only use part 1 if the taxpayer is changing the number of exemptions being claimed on line 6D. Part 2, you can change whether or not the taxpayer has made a donation to the Presidential Election Campaign Fund. Really doesn't affect the taxpayer's taxes, but gives a little bit more money to the politicians' fund. And then part 3, explanation of changes, and the explanation should just be a shorthand summary of what happened. So you can see the examples there in slide number 9 at the bottom, and those are both very good examples. Time limits on refunds, again, 3 years, and there are exceptions. You can see those in publication 17 and the Form 1040X instructions, but they're out of scope. For our situation at the VITA program, if they don't meet the regular rules for the time limit on refunds, then we can't prepare the amended returns. And quite frankly, at the VITA program, we don't have an obligation to prepare amended returns. That's just an optional service that can be offered, and I'm not really sure at this point whether the site coordinator is going to permit amended returns at the site that we're going to be working at. So hadn't really thought about that, but I think it's important to know these rules. And I've been a tax professional for over 40 years, and the IRS, this is the IRS's program, and they want you to file amended returns, particularly One is they're even-handed about it. I mean, if you're entitled to a refund and you didn't claim it, the service, if you're within the statute of limitations, is obligated and, quite frankly, happy to provide an additional refund. The problem with that, of course, is that since COVID started, some couple of 2 to 3 years ago, the service has fallen very, very far behind in processing amended returns. The materials indicate that the delay in handling a claim for an amended return is at least 20 weeks. They said that don't bother them until 20 weeks really. Is basically the message that you get from the service, is that the service centers are not able to process them because of the restrictions that were set up at the GSA with COVID. But the rules that I always learned, going back some 40 years to when I was first working in public accounting, is that a taxpayer who's made an honest mistake on their return in their own favor has no legal obligation to file an amended return, and that is actually part of the tax law under the judicial decisions that have come down, where the service has gone after people who failed to file an amended return, who had discovered their own mistake, but nonetheless failed to file a return that would have increased their taxes. And the rule is, if you made an honest mistake, if it's not intentional, if it's not fraud, then if you later discover that you somehow shortchanged the IRS, you're not required to do so. And I think that rule is still a good rule for private tax preparers. I don't know how comfortable I would feel giving that advice to a client at the IRS VITA program, but I do think that that's an accurate statement of the law. So let's go on to slide number 11. As you can see, there's a typo on the slide, but the link is still good. Where's my amended return? You can check on refunds and balances due and how much the processing time. And on the slide, they say normal processing time is 12 to 16 weeks, and I think that's probably was true in the past. I do think it's not unusual at this point if you're submitting amended returns, to have at least a 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 month wait to find that your amended return has been processed. Completing the amended returns, there's links to publication 4012, tab M, on other returns, and the amended return subsection of tab M gives you the step-by-step guidance on how to prepare them in the software, and then also how to file them. And on page 13, we get around to the slide that does confirm what I just said a little while ago, that VITA TCE sites are not required to prepare prior year's returns, but they're encouraged to provide assistance for the previous 3 years. And then for returns older than 3 years without the required materials, or if the site is unable to assist, the taxpayer must seek help from a paid preparer. And if you do have a client who has, say, taken their deductions in 2021 and then realized that they have those expenses were actually paid in 2022, I would caution them about reporting the same expenses twice, or if they, had some other, issue like that, where they could be involved in either a omission or a double deduction of income that should have been reported. Omissions of income, tend to be prima facie evidence of fraud, and oftentimes knowledge is imputed to a taxpayer, even if they didn't have actual knowledge. There may be, I would just caution them that there may be situations where the service might not believe that was innocent. And I have seen situations, certainly a friend of mine who was a very good tax preparer, no longer or actually not tax preparer, but a tax attorney no longer with us, was prosecuted for a tax crime because he had sold some stock in one year, and he had some low basis stock and high basis stock, and he claimed that he sold the high basis stock in one year, and he sold that same high basis stock the next year. Well, he never claimed the low basis stock, which would have given him a much higher tax because of a higher capital gain when he sold the low basis stock, and so he was prosecuted for reporting too little capital gain in both of those years because he had made a mistake in the prior year, and then he continued it into the second year. So the IRS thought he should know better, and he had to wear an ankle monitor for a while to get out of his tax problems. He had to cop a plea. So in any event, just be careful in handling amended returns. I wouldn't be cavalier about them. I would tell any taxpayer who came in who said that they had made a mistake in a prior year, particularly one that helped them, is that I would caution them to be very, very careful about whether or not to file an amended return, and perhaps if it wasn't part of our duties at the VITA site to seek some third-party assistance from a qualified person like an attorney or a CPA about whether or not to file an amended return. So that was that. Now, there also is a skills workout for this particular lesson, and it is at the VITA TCE site. And as all of the skills workouts, it begins with publication 4491, and then it goes to the same information that you see on slide 1 of the PowerPoint presentation, and it shows you some of the job aids that you have. Now, remember that you want to make sure that if you're following the links just to learn, that's fine. If you're actually preparing returns, you want to make sure that you're using the 2022 version of the IRS material. So just understand that the skills workout was prepared for 2021 season, not for this season in 2023 when we're going to be preparing 2022 tax returns. You can see case study number 1, the example of Bernard, who 2 weeks after he filed his return, he received another W-2 in the mail. Now, if you receive another W-2 in the mail and you don't report it, you're going to have a problem with the Service Center. They have a matching program, and they're going to be able to determine from that third-party reporting that you've underreported your income. So in any event, that's a mistake that was both Bernard's mistake, but also the mistake of perhaps the intake person for not being diligent enough to ask Bernard about all his income, notwithstanding that he hadn't received the W-2 yet. And of course, it was the mistake of the whoever the employer was for Bernard for not getting the W-2s out on a timely basis, because they are required to be sent out by January 31st. So I don't think we get started at the VITA program until February. So, or perhaps the mail was just late, so he could have moved or something like that. Time limit on refunds. The time limit, you can see this and see that if you're more than 3 years late in filing your claim for refund, you're going to be outside that 3-year period, and you won't receive it. And so there's really no reason to file an amended return after 3 years, after that deadline for issuing the refund has expired. That would just be wasted effort. Then there's a skills warm-up on refunds and balances due. You can see that and see the correct answers. It'll tell you if you're correct on things. And then taxpayers who may qualify for the exception to the 3-year time rule, they're still out of scope for VITA TCE, even if you're working at a center that prepares amended or late prior year's returns. So then there's a certification warm-up, the practice and drill, and you can check your answers on that. And then that's it. And there's apparently no video that I'm aware on this. Let me see if there's something that's linked at the. There is a YouTube video on amending a return. So if you go to the link and learn taxes and go to the lesson plan for, you know, I'll tell you how you find this is you go to VITA TCE and then you go down to the where it gives you the list of all of the courses for certification, the teach certification path down at the bottom of the page where they list all the the base up at the top of the page. It's the site map, I guess, for VITA TCE. They got the basic menu and the advanced menu. And then if you go all the way down to the bottom of the column that starts with the advanced menu and go to the teach certification path or to the student certification path and click on that for advanced, you will find a page for amended and prior year returns. Now, for some reason, that's shown as topic 33 for last year. It's topic 34 for this year. And then if you click on topic 33 for the advanced course, you'll find the link to the skills workout for that. And also you'll find media, video, and audio for that. And also there is a tax layer tutorial in the practice lab. You have to use the password to get access to it. It's not just the the happy little videos that we've been watching on the network. But if you click on media, videos, and audios, you do get a link to a YouTube video on amending a return. Well, I just clicked on it now, and apparently that's no longer available. So never mind about all that. Good luck with your studies, and I'll be posting a prep video for the certification exam in just a minute. Bye-bye.